thank you for joining us. We're here today to talk about what for many of us is a passion and a cause, and for the community is an annual effort to make sure no one in southeastern Vermont and southwestern New Hampshire goes hungry. This is the 17th annual Project Feed the Thousands food drive, and joining us to my left are the two co-chairs, George Haynes and Larry Smith, and to my right is the youngest looking veteran director of the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center you're ever going to find, Melinda Busno.
Thank you, Tim.
You're very welcome. So all of this began back in 1994. Before we go there, I want to get an idea about what the present picture is today, and maybe Melinda, you'd be the best one to start off with on that.
Tim, the present picture is frightening. As of the time that we're taping this show, we've given out almost 800 Thanksgiving baskets. So we're expecting to hit 900 at least before we're done. And then we'll redo that for Christmas. And it's going to exceed last year. And there are 7,700 people have been served in the last year by the Drop-In Center food shelf. Totally separate people, at least once. Infants to senior citizens, a lot of the working poor. And in the whole region, it's over 12,000 people who are hungry.
You know, we could talk a lot and probably fill several programs about the reasons why, but really it just cuts across all spectrums of society?
It really does. And right now, with the economy the way it is, we're seeing a lot of the working poor that we never used to see. And we're seeing folks coming in who used to be donors and now who need our services. And that's frightening, and it's very embarrassing for them. And we wish that more people that need us would come to us and not be embarrassed, because we want to be there to help everyone who's in need.
So, gentlemen, contrast that with what you two were thinking back in 1994. How did all this get started?
Well, actually, before we get into the joint project that George and I developed, it was in June or July of 1994. Tim, as you know, when I was news director and general manager at WTSA, as you do now, you get out in the field and do a lot of live news. And I am embarrassed to say that for many years, I didn't understand or see the importance of the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center. I really didn't know what it was about. I had no idea it had a food pantry, and it just didn't seem relevant. And Melinda was very persistent and called one day and said, "It's a nice day. The Vermont Food Bank is doing a food drive and handing out food. It's in the Harmony parking lot. You'd like to do your news. Why don't you come and maybe interview somebody from the Vermont Food Bank?" So I did. And the moment I got to the Harmony parking lot, I'm seeing all of these people that I recognize, single moms, veterans, elderly, people that I know in line waiting for food. The food was gone before the line ended. And I see a smile from Melinda. Now you see that there's a food need in Brattleboro, and there are people hungry, and my concern. So I went to the Drop-In Center where I had never been, and I was just absolutely amazed. There's nothing on the shelves, and it just left an impression. And then it was like, well, what do we do about that? George was president of Brattleboro Savings and Loan, the community bank, WTSA, the community radio station, and George just called and said, "We need to do a project. We're the community bank, you're the community radio station, let's do something for the community." And we kicked around some ideas, and I just said, "George, maybe food for the Drop-In Center." And like me, George said, "What?" And took him to the Drop-In Center, and I think, and George can speak for himself, but I think it left an impression, and that's what we decided we needed to do. And George can tell you the rest and our humble beginnings and our flawed feeling that we would put food in a truck in the middle of the winter and not have it freeze.
Yeah, when Larry spoke about there being hunger in the Brattleboro area, I mean, my immediate thought was probably the same thought as a lot of people, and that was that, what are we talking about, homeless people or people that are living under the Hinsdale Bridge? The profile was completely erroneous on my part, and as Larry said, once I fully understood the profile, once I went to the Drop-In Center, it was readily apparent that people who were hungry were people just like us. There was really no profiling of the person. young people, old people, children. And so it didn't take much at that point to convince me that there was a need. Then the next step was how are we going to do this? And in our infinite wisdom, back in 1994, we said, well, we'll hold a 2-week campaign. We named it Project Feed the Thousand, singular, not thousands, because at that time there was about 1,000 hungry people in our area, contrasted to the 12,000 people in our area that Melinda mentioned earlier. So we said, well, we'll do a 2-week campaign, and we contacted C&S Wholesale Grocers and had them, primarily for visual purposes, put a tractor trailer in the bank parking lot, and we asked people to bring food to the bank. Now, when we look back on that, there's a lot of, it really was a flawed business plan by every stretch of the imagination. First of all, putting the truck in the parking lot, the people thought that we were going to take the food that came to the bank and put it in the truck. And anyone that knew anything about trucking said, that's not a reefer, meaning that's not a refrigerated truck, and in the middle of the winter, all those non-perishable food items, particularly canned goods, will explode in the truck. The other thing was that we said, well, bring food to the bank. Well, we probably should have said is bring money to the bank, but we said bring food to the bank, and probably after the first week we realized that asking people to go shopping and then taking the food that they bought in the grocery store and bringing it to the bank made about as much sense as I don't know what. So as we fast forward, the campaign improved dramatically over the course of the next several years, and even with some revisions in the second week of that campaign, was let's see if we can arrange with the grocery stores to set up bins so that when people shop, they can drop the groceries that they might buy to donate to Project Feed the Thousands right there at the grocery store. Brilliant, right? In addition to that, the first year's campaign, I think, helped us in several ways. Wanted to raise the awareness level of hunger in our area. It was a start. No, we didn't fill the truck. We got about 80% full in that 2-week campaign. But that was the beginning of Project Feed the Thousands, Feed the Thousand that first year. And from there, the campaign grew dramatically, always at a pace that was just behind the need.
And that is really scary because the need has gone up exponentially. And I know that both of you gentlemen, to your credit, you've gotten involved in this cause on a year-round basis. Did it really strike you that much?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, I don't know that it struck us that much, but in some respects, well, only because we thought, well, this will help. But as I just mentioned, the need has continued to increase dramatically. And the other piece of the puzzle, and Larry will fill in, I'm sure, some of the details as well as Melinda, but doing a food drive around holiday time is great because the need is then, but it's not just then, it's all year long. So in essence, feeding the hungry, Project Feed the Thousands, really is a year-round program. It gets more emphasis at this time of the year, the Friday before Thanksgiving through the end of the year. But let's face it, we do that, and that's our major drive. But we have other events throughout the year.
Larry?
I'll tell you, we do it because it's the right thing to do. It's in our hearts. But when you work with hungry people, it has a profound effect on you. And here we are 17 years later. Now, the first year that George and I did it, I think we got $1,700. And I think a lot of that, I think I coerced, and I was not at Vermont Yankee then, but I got the last of their donation money. So George and I decided, well, we're going to go shopping. And I think we went to Price Chopper and bought $1,000 worth of groceries, and we bring it to the drop-in center. And we're pretty excited. And I remember a woman and her 2 young kids on a couch in the drop-in center, and George and I are merrily bringing in food, and this woman is crying. And I thought, uh-oh, and asked Melinda, are we upsetting her? Is this not a good time for us to be here? And she said, no, she's not crying because, well, she's crying because you're here. She's been sitting here most of the day waiting for food, and you just brought in 100 bags of groceries. And that has a profound effect. and we knew that whatever we were doing made a difference. And this is the most, I think, amazing thing for us, is that every single canned good, every bag, everything that we do is tangible and is a meal for someone or a family. It's, you know, you try to get your hands around like Haitian relief, $5 billion, and the devastation in that country, and yet they still haven't removed debris. It's just, you just can't get your hands around it. But this project, every bit of food or every dollar that we raise is going back to feed hungry people, which is the whole goal. And this year, and you were all there, we're at the Brattleboro Area Middle School, and it never ceases to amaze me. And George and I had to look at each other afterwards. There was a young girl, middle school students, and they were all asked, what does Project Feed the Thousands mean to you? And they had some very good answers. It meets hunger, it's our friends, it's our neighbors. And this young girl just said, well, and I can't paraphrase it, but it was like, well, I didn't know about Project Feed the Thousands, but this is where my mother and I get our food. And I just looked at George, and it's like, oh my God. It just, and the most innocent, and it's like, wow, you know what? This really is doing some good. I mean, it just blows my mind.
You know, there are a lot of studies out there that state what happens when children are hungry in school, but I got to tell you, for somebody who had been there as a child, it really can be demoralizing, and you really have to just think about what kind of community you want to be, and making sure that you help your neighbors, because with the state of this economy, ladies and gentlemen, it could be any of us at a moment's notice who go from helping out to needing help.
Yeah, for sure. And in Vermont, 1 in 6 children are going to be hungry or at risk of going to bed hungry tonight. In Windham County, it's 1 in 5 children. So if you think of that middle school group, 1 in 5 of those children come from a household where hunger is an issue. And that alone is frightening. And every public school in Brattleboro, at least 50% of the students are eligible for free and reduced price school meals. In one of the grade schools, it's 65%. That's a lot of hungry kids. And we need everything we can get to raise the money and the food to feed people year-round.
And as we look at the various age groups in our society, people, even with 2-income families trying to make it on a rent in Windham County, are really having a tough time making some budget choices come month's end.
Well, what they call the housing wage in Vermont, the wage that it costs to rent a basic 2-bedroom apartment in Windham County, is $17.77 an hour. Minimum wage is a little over $8 an hour, and it comes to less than $8.25 at $16.25 if you have 2 people. So you're still more than $1 an hour short of what it costs to rent a basic apartment. So it's no wonder that people are working 80 hours a week, or both members in a household are working, and they still can't make ends meet.
And then you talk about people on fixed incomes, disability or retirement programs. One of the biggest things with people in their elderly years is malnutrition because of that very issue.
It is, and it's a huge thing. And we have a small program at the Drop-In Center where we deliver bags to people who are shut-ins. We have a couple of volunteers that deliver a bag of food each week to about 20 to 25 folks that are unable to come to the food shelf. And we're probably saving their lives in doing that, because they don't have access to food otherwise. And that happened because I went to visit an elderly lady that was volunteering for us, and she was sick, and she had nothing in her refrigerator but a loaf of moldy bread and a can of cat food. And I offered to go to the store, and she said, I can't this month. I paid my taxes, and I paid for oil, and there's nothing left for food. And that's when we realized, oh, we have another problem here. Senior citizens that are too proud to ask and who really need the assistance.
So we ought to mention that this is not just a Brattleboro issue. There's, what, 25, 26 programs throughout our region that this effort is helping?
Yeah, food shelves and soup kitchens all over southeastern Vermont, southwestern New Hampshire.
Yeah, this is not a issue or a problem that's just pertinent to the Brattleboro area or the state of Vermont. It's that way throughout the United States. which in some respects is very, very sad. I think the other component, there's two components that I wanted to talk about. One is the fact that as we talk about people, and particularly this time of the year, having to make decisions and the tightness of the economy, you can't get a reduction in your rent. You can't get a reduction in your prescription drugs. You can't get a reduction on the cost to heat your home. And so there has to be a place where the budget breaks down, and the choice again becomes the food budget. And so whether it's that young lady and her mother, who I was as blown away as Larry and you were a week ago at the middle school, that says that's where we get our food. That's where people do get their food, or can get their food, because that's one area where they can supplement their budget, and we can help them. Because people are proud, as Melinda said. People are proud. They really don't want to ask for help. So we have 12,000 people in our area that are asking for help. I would venture to guess that there's, and I don't want to say there's another 12,000, but I bet there are several other thousand people in our area that the need is there, and they are too proud or too embarrassed or whatever to ask. One of the reasons why the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center serves Brattleboro and some 50 other communities, and we've had this discussion with, as we mentioned, there's probably some 25 agencies in the area that help out. But there is that factor where people from, say, Wilmington, even though there's the Deerfield Valley Food Pantry, or Townsend, where there's a food shelf, or Hinsdale, don't want to go to the local food shelf. And so they might come to the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center, where they hope that no one knows them, and they get their food there, so that they're not recognized.
Larry?
Or many of these food shelves or food pantries are only open one day a week. They're limited hours. Some are more restrictive about who gets food, and for the drop-in center, besides being available 5 or 6 days a week, we don't ask any questions. I mean, I think there's a minimum, but we don't turn anyone away that needs food. And folks know that, and we have become the place where they go for food. We've been very fortunate over the years that we've done this, and in the last couple of years, I think the best thing that's happened for George and I, besides the continued unbelievable dedication of CNS Wholesale Grocers, is the Vermont Food Bank warehouse in southern Vermont. At first, George and I frankly thought, as did Melinda, this might be a threat to Project Feed the Thousands. Yes. It is not. It is the most wonderful thing that has happened for us, because CNS, 20 of our 27 trucks last year came from CNS Wholesale Grocers. 20 tractor-trailer trucks of food. That now goes to the food bank and is stored. And frankly, 90% of that food goes to Project Feed the Thousands, the Drop-In Center, and other organizations. The rest of the other 7 truckloads that George and I raised during this campaign, which comes from the stores, it comes from the high school, it comes from Leader Beverage, it comes from other sources, goes directly to the Drop-In Center. And as fast as we get it unloaded, out it goes. But because of the food bank, we're also getting fresh produce that we could never use in the past, because there was no way to refrigerate it. There was no space. This is warehouse space. We did have warehouse space at the book press for years, but it wasn't even, there was no security.
There was no security, there was no refrigeration.
We lost a lot of food, no refrigeration, so this has been wonderful. It's an efficient way for us to get more food into the hands of people in a much better fashion. So they have been wonderful partners.
So 2 things. One, my parents once told me that many hands make light work, and it really is pleasing to see that as time goes on, the number of hands involved with this grow and grow. And secondly, I can think of one year I was out on a food drive, and there was a woman with not a lot of money. She looked like she was wearing secondhand clothes, but came over and dropped a $100 bill into the collection and said, "Look, I won the lottery last night. I got a couple of $100, and I'm not going to use this, and I could just as very easily be on the receiving end." So I think this is where it's got to go.
Yeah,
Tim, yeah. I was going to say you're absolutely right, and if we go back and talk about Project Feed the Thousand in 1994 and where we have evolved to today, I think one of the most rewarding things for myself and Larry is the amount of people that we have been able to involve in the project. We have the school system, whether it's grades K all the way through grade 12. School children participate. I think it teaches them some invaluable lessons. Sometimes it may be a strain in the sense of the percentages that need reduced lunch or free lunch. But the bottom line is that there's a lesson about helping your neighbor and about helping your fellow students and about helping people in the community. And to start that at an early age and having the support of the school, that's when the project really took off, was when the schools began to be involved. And then we go out and we look at other people in the community, whether it's the person who won the lottery and wants to donate $100, whether it's a person writing a check, whether it's a person going to a convenience store and dropping their loose change in one of the containers, or whether it's somebody writing a check and sending it to Project Feed the Thousands. There really isn't anyone in the community that can't participate if they'd like to. That's huge, and that's how we're able to reach some of these lofty goals that we have. Larry said about CNS. That's true. 20 of the 27 tractor trailers, but the $125,000 in cash that we raised, a little bit more than that last year, and this year's goal comes from individuals.
Yes, it does.
$5, $50, $500, it's amazing because every single person that donates to Project Feed the Thousands, George and I and Melinda sign a letter of thanks, and that's the way we will always do it. A personal thank you. Many of these folks we know, but we recognize their donation no matter how small or how large.
So how can our friends and neighbors, whether they be one, two, a business, a school, or corporation, tell us how they can make a difference?
Well, that's easy. You can give money, you can give cash, you can volunteer your efforts, you can do all of the above. Sitting around this table is most of the administration of Project Feed the Thousands, which is another amazing element that this is entirely volunteer-driven. There's no paid position. There's no other funding source. This is it. And we're missing our angel Karen Cedergren from River Valley Credit Union that does all of the logistics that George used to do at the bank, and Rose Kavanaugh. And thank God we have her to put out bins, to do posters, to do cash boxes. But this is all a volunteer effort, so we always need people to get involved.
The one thing that people can do, and I wish they would do it more, in my perfect world, everybody does it, but I think that maybe 5 or 10%, if that many people, when they go shopping, if they would just pick up one extra item every time they shop, one can of tuna fish, a jar of peanut butter, some pasta, a non-perishable food item, and put it in the bin. If they would be conscious enough to just do that one item every time they shopped, it would make a humongous difference.
So there are 3 ways people can get involved, actually 4. One is by volunteering. Goodness knows we could always use another set of hands.
Yes, we can.
I mean, the 3 of you have gotten me involved so deep. During this time of the year, my boss wonders who I'm working for. But one way, as George said, shop and drop where you shop. Just make an extra contribution. There are donation bins in area stores and even in small convenience stores. I'm very pleased to see that. Secondly, money. Money goes a long way at the Vermont Food Bank.
It does. It really does. The food bank does not charge us for the food. They do charge for delivery, and we do pay an annual fee every year, just $2,500 to be a member, but it works out to less than pennies per pound most of the time.
And food is important right now, Tim, because of the holidays. We just did, what, Thanksgiving
800 Thanksgiving
baskets.
baskets, probably going to hit more than 800 by the time we're done, and then start right over for Christmas.
So now is when we need the food, at the holidays, when people need it most. But then when that food is physically gone, March or April, that's why we need the $125,000 to go out and purchase food, because people are hungry 365 days a year. While we focus this campaign on this concentrated period, November 19th to December 31st, we have to feed people around the year.
And some of the things we have to pay for are like those 1,000 Thanksgiving turkeys that we had to buy those. The food bank gets them at a discounted rate, and they charge us much less than we would pay in the store, but we're still paying 70 cents a pound. So you figure 1,000 14-pound turkeys at 70 cents a pound, we're looking at somewhere around $8,000 or $9,000 just for turkeys for Thanksgiving.
Wow. So you can send a cash contribution in care of River Valley Credit Union, or take a look at one of the many cash boxes out around this area. Or get on your computer, log on projectfeedthethousands.org and make a contribution that way. You can either target it to one of the 7 different programs that directly are involved with Project Feed the Thousands, or just for general help. And I guess as a final note, how long are we going to do this? Until there are no more hungry people?
Until there are no more hungry people. And I have one more thing that people can do, and it doesn't cost them anything. What they've learned by listening to what we've said tonight, they can pass on to someone else who is not watching the show and educate one of their family members or neighbors or someone they work with, so they can pass that word.
Larry Smith, George Haynes, Melinda Busno. You know, I've really enjoyed our working group over the years, and it's like the more years that we're around, we seem to just kind of become one other big family at the holidays. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
Feels
Tim.
good.
Better
Thanks,
believe
Tim.
it. So, you now know what you need to do. And the kind of community Brattleboro is, we know that we cannot let anyone go hungry. So, you have your assignment. If you have any questions, contact any of the people at the table here, including me. I'm Tim Johnson. Thank you for making a difference in your community.